Okay, so the lore of Elden Ring's cosmic sorcerers. I played as like a gravity mage when I did play, and I really think that the whole magic aspect of the game is really interesting. So this is great. Like I loved Estelle. I think Estelle is one of the coolest things in the entire game. Fascinating and horrifying, and I love it. But also just like the academy and like all of that. I just think it's all fascinating. I love cosmic horror. I think it's fantastic. I've got a whole Lovecraftian chest piece. I like cosmic horror, so anything to do with that, I'm obsessed with. Yeah, yeah, I love that, Dapper. I think it's so fascinating. I think it's really, really cool. I like it. So let's get into the video.
An astrologer looked to the sky and found something called the primeval current in the stars above. Then, miraculously, what they saw in the cosmos actually manifested in reality, and the very amber of the stars rained down on the lands between. This glintstone of the cosmos would go on to inspire those that studied it, but there was also a darkness up there between the stars.
No. A darkness from space?
And what some saw would break their minds and inspire a fate that was worse than death. This is the story of Elden Ring's cosmic sorcery, a force that would define an entire era of life in the lands between.
Can I just say that I really, really, really appreciate like the editing style of these videos. They're so impressive. Like, it's all just a bunch of gameplay footage that has been like specifically designed to tell a story, and I am just so enamored. I am very emotionally involved in these videos. They're so well put together. It's like art. I really like this. This is good.
It all began with the founding Reign of Stars, a legendary sorcery that was the founding glintstone sorcery. You might have missed this spell in your playthrough, but it's located here, hidden along an illusory path leading to the heretical rise within the mountaintops of the Giants. Its description reveals that it is the eldest primeval sorcery, said to have been discovered by an ancient astrologer. Now, we don't know who this astrologer was, but we know they were not alone. For it was here, in these icy peaks closest to the sky, that the astrologers who preceded the sorcerers established themselves. And with ancient tools of astronomy, they looked to the cosmos above and read fate in the stars. But this was more than mere stargazing. The stars quite literally govern fates in Elden Ring.
And then Radon came in and said, "Fuck that." By the way, I would unironically wear the astrologer's robes. They look so cozy.
Learn this from the starlight shards and amber starlight items. The former is a pale blue shard. It's what remains of a passing flash of starlight, and the latter is the same, except it has a pale amber glow, and it tells of the belief that if the stars command our fates, then amber-hued stars must command the fates of the gods. During Celivis's questline, the blue starlight shards are distilled into this.
That, by the way, Celivis, that was the outfit that I wore for a while. It also looked very cozy. And there's the closest thing that I found personally to like a witch hat, even though it was kind of more like a sombrero. I don't know.
Blue tonic, which can be given to other NPCs to turn them into summonable puppets. You are quite literally using starlight to forcibly control and take away their fates when you do this. These exact same intoxicating drafts had historically been used in the Eternal City, as is exemplified by the Night Maiden and Swordstress puppets, who actually chose this controlled fate for themselves, presumably so that they could better serve the needs of the Eternal City. You can learn more about that in this video, where we discuss the Eternal City in its entirety. But the Nox of the Eternal City weren't the only ones that were drawing power from the stars in this way. The royal house of Caria, too, drew great power from astrology. The telescope item, for example, is actually a smaller part of a larger astrological tool that was once used by members of the Carian royal family for their own brand of Carian astrology that revolved around Renala and the full moon rather than the stars.
I'm also just thinking, like, I think it's hilarious that it's astrology, but they're also using crystals. I don't know. Makes me think of crystal bitches. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a whole ass, like, mineral collection. I collect minerals and fossils and stuff because I love chemistry and geology, but at the same time, I find it very funny that this is all very crystal bitch. This is like gothic crystal bitch land. Space crystals? Well, okay, I have a meteorite, and I've also got tektites, which is basically crystals formed from meteorite impacts. So that's like the closest thing to it. I wonder if there are any blue tektites. Or there's also this it's a meteorite. It's called palisite. So it's basically a meteorite that also has, I believe it's olivine. It's like a green crystal formation that forms in between like a metal lattice. It's really cool. Look it up, palisite. I wonder if there are any meteorites that have hit that have like blue crystals inside. Because the olivine is like greenish yellow. I need to do some Googling later and probably spend way too much money. Oh my god, I need to find out if there are any blue tektites though, because right now there's like Libyan desert glass, which is like yellow, and then there's like moldavite, which is green, and then there's like these Chinese tektites that are like, they look black, but when you shine a light through them, they're kind of like a yellowy brown. But if there's any blue, I want that. I want that really badly. All right. Someone send me a DM to remind me to look that up later in case I forget.
But to most, the moon was not considered equal to the stars, and it was actually the stars that most would draw upon for their sorcery. These sorcerers would come together at Raya Lucaria, a place of learning that institutionalized the practice of glintstone sorcery. And this is a little triumvirate of three factions. There's the Nox and their descendants, there's the Carians, and there's the Sorcerers of Raya Lucaria, who all trace their origins back to astrology. These factions overlap at times, they interact and clash, and their shared history is fascinating and complicated, but it all comes back to the cosmos in the end.
Cosmos. Do you know what it's called, Bridges?
But let's return once again to the founding reign of stars, which tells us that the glimpse of the primeval current that the ancient astrologers saw became a reality, and the stars' amber rained down on this land. But what exactly is the primeval current? Well, let's break down the term. The word current means it's a moving flow, or torrent, and the word primeval means that this torrential flow likely existed from the very beginning of time. And thanks to the description for Comet Azure, we know that the primeval current is a distant starry expanse, something that is visually similar to the torrential comet generated from this spell. But what's truly amazing about this cosmic force is that somehow, this ancient astrologer managed to manifest a rain of stars upon the Earth merely after glimpsing it in the primeval current of the cosmos far away.
It must have been powerful.
And I speculate that starlight shards are actually another example of this phenomenon. Their description reveals that these are what remains of a passing flash of starlight, and we exclusively loot these at the foot of giant stone astrolabes, which are these ancient stargazing tools. Thus, rather than being a piece of star that has fallen to the ground, I think these might be a byproduct of the act of looking up at the stars. Why else would we loot them here? And so, in this same manner, first established with these starlight shards and then the founding rain of stars, glintstone sorcerers would go on to replicate this phenomenon, using their powers of comprehension to conceive of new cosmic elements that could be manifested in reality. Or put another way, they formulated spells that let them throw giant rocks at each other, and it was a huge hit with everyone. But among these glintstone sorcerers were some who wished to truly understand the mysteries of the primeval current, no matter the cost. These were sorcerers like Lusat and Azur, who would literally become crystal in order to sync up with and better understand these powers of the cosmos. And then there was Selen, the Graven Witch, who threw all ethics to the wind and wished to see humanity ascend no matter the cost. And make no mistake, the stars are alive, in a sense. Look at Estelle, for example. This is a malformed star, but a star nonetheless, birthed from a void, or so it is said. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Most sorcerers, it seems, would just be content with merely manifesting cosmic power, and so they would embed a piece of physical glintstone into a staff and then use that glintstone as a sort of catalyst for the stars above.
Ooh.
And since glintstone was needed to channel spells, and since sorcerers needed glintstone to study, I think having access to physical glintstone would have been a really important thing.
Yo, I remember finding the meteorite staff and just being so happy as a gravity mage, you know. I like happy fucking day to me. Oh my god, that was a game changer.
And luckily for the sorcerers, glintstone, being sourced from meteors and comets, had fallen to the lands between before. So these valuable crystals were mined and put to great use. And so, atop and amidst enormous quantities of glintstone in the lakes of Leonia, a place of learning was built, an institution known as the Raya Lucaria Academy. Sorcerers, as a whole, were powerful. They could read fate in the stars, fire cosmic projectiles at their enemies, and potentially even command the fates of others. So naturally, there needed to be an institution for their power, a place of learning, but also a place of hierarchy and even governance, where rules about sorcery could be debated and enforced. When you journeyed through Raya Lucaria, you would have collected these symbols of their institution. These are stone masks, called glintstone crowns, and not just anyone is supposed to wear these crowns. They are a symbol of achievement, and they represent one's mastery of a certain conspectus or school of learning within the academy. They also make a good weapon, if all else fails. But why was this design specifically chosen as a symbol of achievement? Well, according to many item descriptions, there isn't just life in stone, but there is a wisdom contained in stone as well. So their masks were crafted with stone and set with glintstone. The glintstone is typically set upon the eyes and or the brain, a tradition that I speculate originated with the sorcerer Azur, who was one of the first, if not the first, glintstone sorcerer.
Oh, that's
His
cool.
blue-green glintstone crown was set with crystals.
I killed this guy, right? I'm pretty sure that I did. That spot looks very familiar. I'm pretty sure I killed this guy. And then I got Comet Azure from them? Am I remembering that right? And then I never fucking used that spell. Because his corpse is just sitting around? Oh, then who was it that I killed that was just like this guy? In this spot. He's the big explodey hammer spell guy. I'm trying to think, because this reminds me a lot. Okay, maybe not this guy, but someone who is very similar. It's been like a year since I played, and there's so many guys I killed. I'm trying to remember. Who was it that I killed then on that like rock, like, who was it? I don't know. It's definitely like a more powerful, like, astrologer enemy. A very annoying PvP glitch using glint blade phalanx. Oh. Well, hopefully they patched it. I never did PvP because I am not like good at this game. I'm not good at Souls games. I power through until I eventually beat it, but like PvP, I don't need to do that to myself. I'm already embarrassing enough as I am. I don't need other people to embarrass me further, especially on stream. God. Oh, hello. Alrighty. Yeah. I know. I need to get like one of those boards where I can press a button and then music plays or stops, or dials for volume and shit like that. Transitions to different scenes. Okay. I know, you're very upset with me, little guy, but hear me out. You're very full of food right now. Your litter box is clean. And you're more than welcome to hang out with me here. Alright. Back to the video.
Glintstone sorcerer. His blue-green glintstone crown was set with crystals and eventually replaced his own brain and skull altogether.
Nice.
Which enhanced his powers by helping him catalyze with glintstone, though it clearly came at great physical cost.
Yeah.
And I speculate that this crown eventually replaced his own brain and skull because glintstone kind of does that. It corrodes, it consumes. We see its effects best on other creatures like the dragon Smaragd, who was a devourer of sorcerers with a body that became corroded over time by their glintstones.
Yeah, which was really cool. And I remember the first time I ran into this fucking guy. Going after this guy as a spellcaster that did not have rock sling yet. Oh man. Like, you literally can't do enough damage to him before you run out of mana. It just... God, it did not work.
Thanks to that strict sorcerer diet. But as with Azure, this corrosion did not come without benefits, and he now breathes a powerful glintstone breath. The sorcerer Azure was an early sorcerer of the primeval current, but he wasn't the only one. There was also the sorcerer Lusat, who experienced a similar glintstone convergence of body and mind.
Wait. That eye for a head, that big ball, you know, that reminds me a little bit of like Estelle's big eye. Do any of you guys also see it? It's like kind of similar, you know.
Who experienced a similar glintstone convergence of body and mind. Together, these masters of sorcery each glimpsed a part of the primeval current. And from what I gather, the primeval current seems like the sort of thing that can only really be glimpsed once before it either breaks or terrifies the viewer. Azure and Lusat only have one primeval current spell each, after all. For instance, when Lusat glimpsed into the primeval current, he conceived of the spell Stars of Ruin as he beheld the final moments of a great star cluster, and upon seeing it, he too was broken. And when Azure glimpsed into the primeval current, he saw darkness and conceived of the spell Comet Azure, but was left both bewitched and fearful of the abyss.
Yeah.
Both Azure and Lusat clearly had a prominent role at the Academy, but Azure specifically was the first founding glintstone sorcerer to have an impact upon Raya Lucaria, for there is a line of research called the Carolus Conspectus, dubbed the oldest of the Academy's lineages of study, begat by the Sorcerer Azure. Sorcerers who follow in his footsteps by studying this conspectus pursue the mysteries of comets, leading to new kinds of comet sorceries like glintstone comet shard and shard spiral. Each conspectus appears to be named after a founding individual. These stone crowns are designed after actual people, after all, people you can see in the flesh upon their matching portraits in the Academy. So even though the Carolus Conspectus follow the path began by the Sorcerer Azure, their conspectus of learning must have been sort of formalized by someone named Carolus. But as time went on, more conspectuses needed to be created as new lines of inquiry were discovered, and so logically the Olivinus Conspectus should have been the second to be created, for this line of research is also concerned with the study of meteors in the primeval current, except this conspectus began with the Sorcerer Lusat. Their spells study clusters of stars, with lesser spells like glintstone stars and star shower, all echoing the great Stars of Ruin spell that originally broke Master Lusat. Lusat and Azure were true masters at the Academy, after all. They were actually dubbed Grandmasters, specifically, with special robes that reflected that, and it seems like no one ever went on to achieve such a rank or sacrifice as much as they did.
Yeah.
And they sacrificed a lot.
Yeah, they sacrificed their entire brain, their entire head. Though, to be honest, it would be very cool to have a bunch of magical crystals growing out of my body. I feel like that might make some changes to my life.
They can barely even move anymore, and when Selen talks about them, she talks about their bodies rather than a traditionally living person. Perhaps they've actually ascended to a higher plane of existence.
Oh yeah,
that might
okay.
explain why they weren't really around anymore to form their own conspectuses, something that was left to Carolus and Olivinus and others instead.
Alright.
With such enigmatic founders, many dedicated themselves to the study of glintstone, taking vows of virtue and austerity. In return, they received the deep blue robe of Raya Lucaria, and were able to study on its grounds. Some nobles of Laendel were even permitted to study here clearly, though their meagre accomplishments never warranted them earning a stone crown, and fittingly, you only see them casting glintstone pebble in-game.
Which, by the way, Glintstone Pebble is honestly one of the most useful spells in the entire game. It uses next to no mana, and it does such a... like, it does a decent amount of damage considering how little it requires. And you can spam it. It really does, Dapper. It really does. Like, it is literally one of the most useful spells in the entire game. When you die, you can have your ashes made into... Yeah, well, see, I don't want to get too, like, dark and distracted, Bridges, but I had to, unfortunately, put down one of my cats last year, and I actually have his ashes, and I'm gonna get them turned into a diamond. So, you know, and I'm probably gonna do that with, like, all of my pets, to be totally honest. Get them turned into, like, jewelry. So I can have them forever. A big sword? Well, I have a small space rock. Yeah, a small space rock is pretty OP, not gonna lie.
To assist in their learning, a powerful spellcaster would often go and cast a spell called Terra Magica from the tallest belfry of the Academy. This sigil would be cast with such strength and allow for such a vivid experience of spellcasting success that it turned many a fledgling into a true sorcerer in a flash of understanding. But not all learning took place at the Academy. In fact, a couple of signature spells were specifically given to those who departed from the Academy. to embark on journeys. Starlight is a spell that guides such sorcerers in dark places, and it reads, "Even during the blackest nights, sojourns underground, or imprisonment in jail, the stars are never far from a sorcerer's side." And then there was Glintstone Arc, which would allow these fledgling sorcerers to cleave through the ranks of the fools that would outnumber them on their journeys.
What a great spell.
Such journeys were encouraged by the Academy. There was even a conspectus for this practice called the Hierodus Conspectus, with a crown that was granted to scholars who engaged in nomadic study away from the Academy. In-game, this crown is worn by errant sorcerer Wilhelm, who fights with night sorceries and wields the Staff of Loss, which enhances night sorceries. This staff doesn't even have a glintstone embedded in its tip, and supposedly it can only cast night sorceries as a result. That's how important asceticism was to some sorcerers, and they believed that it was a powerful path towards discovery. This conspectus also seemed to see value in depriving the senses. The crown of Hierodus is blindfolded, after all. We see this same practice of veiling the eyes down in the Eternal City as well, and the Nox's descendants were of course accomplished practitioners of night sorceries, which seem to be thematically tied to this blindfolded, ascetic embrace of the void.
And then they don't get consumed by crystals like the stupid people upstairs.
Moving on though, this habit of sending fledgling sorcerers away must have posed a bit of a problem, however, as when war broke out in the Lands Between, Raya Lucaria would close and seal its gates.
Oh, Dapper, real quick, I don't remember what it's called. I don't know if articulated is the word that you're thinking, but there is this form of preservation for animals that I have seen where they do get it like kind of down to the bone, but then they have the animals in a liquid and they introduce certain chemicals which make the bones turn into funky colors. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, oh, is that what it's called? I don't remember what it's called. I've just seen them for sale before. And I thought they were really cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're so freaking cool. Would you really want that? I mean, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I think it's cool as hell. Yeah, oh man, I would love to collect wet specimens and whatnot. I think they're so cool. I think it'd be really cool to have in like a cabinet of curiosities. But Gigi does not like wet specimens. They freak him out, so we don't have any, unfortunately. Yeah. I do, however, have a bunch of minerals and fossils, and I have like skulls, and I have tarantula molts, and a whole bunch of stuff. Oh my god, I want to have an entire room that's a cabinet of curiosities with like encyclopedias and like cool artifacts. I want an entire room dedicated to it. And then I want a desk where I can write, and I want to have plants and all sorts of crazy stuff. That'll be my like my room. That'll be my you know how men have like man caves? That'll be my woman cave. It'll be so freaking cool. Yeah. One day. One day.
Preventing access to most, including its journeying fledgling sorcerers. The only way to get back inside was to use a glintstone key to activate the warp magic within the seals. These keys only seem to belong to accomplished sorcerers, and they remember their users, meaning that thieves or bluntstones like Thops could not get inside. In the current age, Thops mentions that the Academy closed its gates after declaring that they wouldn't interfere with the shattering.
That's
now,
so cool.
This suggests to me that the Academy might have had a bit of a habit of striving for a sort of neutrality or indifference in world affairs. Indeed, they had developed an entire conspectus who sought power in order to quell conflict. These were the battle mages of the Heimer Conspectus, who wielded stone clubs and spells of cannon and gavel. A gavel is commonly used as a symbol of judgment, but rather than interfering with outside affairs, I believe the Heimer Conspectus mainly functioned as the Academy's judiciary.
Oh,
Their crown is even blindfolded, which is widely regarded in the real world as a symbol of unbiased justice. And with their preparedness for combat, the Heimer Conspectus were cited as being the only ones who dared to venture outside whenever war had broken out. And just like the blindfolded members of the Herodes Conspectus, the battle mages of Heimer believed that seclusion was no way to foster discovery, and instead believed that it was only a convenient form of escape. That said, we do find sorcerers of other conspectuses outside the Academy as well, though you can sort of infer that they're a bit wary to be away from home because they're often accompanied by marionettes.
Those guys are
The
crazy.
marionettes are dolls, constructs that were crafted and animated by the sorcerers who are their masters. There are a couple of variants. There's an avian variant with curved swords that...
Yo, when I was playing through the game before I started using the Mimic a bunch, the marionette summon, so useful. Like the ones that can fly, so good. So good for crowd control. Oh my gosh, they were so incredibly useful, especially in like certain areas where there would be like different platforms and there'd be enemies that were up like shooting at you. They would just go up there and ruin their day. It's awesome. Marionettes are great. They're so great.
can fly and throw fire pots, and then there's the typical marionettes with spiked spears, short swords, and short bows. Lots of short bows.
Yeah.
These will commonly drop down upon you in ambush, and while they like to go a bit ballistic, they do act as crudely effective support for a ton of the sorcerers that you'll meet in-game. You'll even find a few of these down in the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel, where glintstone miners are hard at work extracting glintstone and ore. These miners don't use conventional tools though. Instead, they mine with a digger's staff, embedded with a glintstone, casting spells such as Shatter Earth or Rock Blaster. A fascinating little detail here though is that these mining spells carried enormous stigma at the Academy because they marked their user as a failed scholar, perhaps as someone who had to turn to menial labor, lacking the intelligence to pursue the complex mysteries of the cosmos. Indeed, the Overseers attack by crushing scraps of glintstone rather than with any advanced sorceries. At the end of the crystal tunnel is a crystallian, an inorganic being that was hewn from crystal long ago.
So
but
annoying.
these are more than mere
God.
constructs. They are ancient and even possess a faint sort of intellect dubbed the wisdom of the stone.
I hated fighting
Long
these
ago,
guys.
they even made a concord, or an agreement, with the Carrion royal family. We don't know the nature of this agreement, but some can be found chilling upon the moonlight altar, allowed to stay in close proximity to their crystals, perhaps. And for their part, we do know that the Crystallians did teach the Carrions a spell called Magic Downpour to mark the occasion. And Raya Lucaria sought kinship with these beings as well, for they are close to the ideals of the primeval current, and so are revered guests of the sorcerers. The best example of this might be down in the dimly lit Academy Crystal Cave underneath Raya Lucaria, a crystal cave that is not mined, perhaps out of respect for the Crystallian duo at the end of the tunnel. There are even living quarters down here, and I suspect these belong to a group of sorcerers called the Crystal Cadre, which was a group that was founded to research the wisdom of stone possessed by the Crystallian. However, just like the primeval current, these sorcerers clearly don't have all the answers on these beings. They call them inscrutable, and note that they have but one clear purpose, and that is to safeguard their crystals unto the end. Though there is one theory on these beings, and it's that they are waiting, yearning for the return of their creator, who will carve for them new brethren. A few sorcerers down here near the Crystallian are in possession of the Twin Sage Helm, which marks them as members of the Twin Sage Conspectus. These were the elites of the academy, permitted to study and excel in sorceries of all kinds. And I assume it was these members, these elite members,
take that
who
candle.
would climb out of
Fuck
this
you.
cave and cast the legendary Terra Magica that would cover the entire academy's grounds from this tall belfry that we mentioned earlier. But the Twin Sage Helm wasn't the only mark of a proficient scholar. There was also the Witch's Glintstone Crown, which was granted to a scholar who excelled in her studies, which also merited the title of Witch. And again, you can see most of these conspectus portraits hanging in Dry Lucaria. For example, here is the Witch, the Twin Sage, Carolus, Olivinus, and all of these portraits.
Wait, so that would be Selin then, right? Is it Selin? Because I don't know if it is. I remember for the longest time everybody was like, oh, we don't know what she looks like. Oh, we gotta break the code and see what's under the helmet and stuff. I remember for a very long time, at least in my space, a lot of people had no idea what Selin looked like. And they were trying to find out because, you know, horny. That's just what guys do, I guess. I imagine that's her. So now we finally get to actually see. What? Yeah, Dapper, as if that hasn't been the leading cause of humanity pushing everything forward.
Portraits are hung in the debate parlor of the academy, where members would likely have engaged in argument in order to test and help validate their...
Yo, that was where the big dog was, right? Face was confirmed under the mask? I believe so. That was where I fought the big quick dog, right?
ideas about sorcery. It's also where I assume they argued about whether certain things even should be allowed to be learned here, or whether certain members should be exiled, but we'll get to that shortly. Because first, the final conspectus that we haven't yet mentioned is the Lazuli conspectus. These sorcerers studied lunar sorceries, a quote-unquote heterodox pursuit that views the moon as equal to the stars, with a robe coloured in the hue of the full moon, which signifies their heresy. And of course, these sorceries include many signature spells of Caria. And so we finally arrive at Caria. This is Carian Manor, and to the south are their stargazing grounds, both situated upon the western coast of Leonia, which, according to the map, has always been closely associated with Carian royalty. They have been around for a long time, a really long time. Specifically, Caria traces its roots all the way back to the ancient astrologers that existed alongside the fire giants. This is most apparent when you're looking at two items. First, the Sword of Night and Flame, which became a storied sword and treasure of Caria Manor. It was clearly crafted to commemorate the astrologers' early experiences with the primeval current and their shared experiences with the fire giants as well. And the fact that Caria inherited this sword suggests that they trace their ancestry back to the time of this sword. And then there's the Stargazer heirloom, which tells of the rise of Caria as a house of royalty through Renala and her full moon. The young astrologer gazed at the night sky as she walked. She had always chased the stars every step of her journey. Then she met the full moon, and in time, the astrologer became a queen. This royal house continued this tradition of stargazing and raised princesses and Carian knights to serve as their retainers. One of the foremost Carian knights was named Loretta, a woman we talked about recently in the video I did on the Eternal Cities, as it was rumored that she was an Albinoric. Albinorics, as you may know if you watched that video, were widely despised in the Lands Between, though Caria is one of the few factions that seems to be pretty friendly with them. Albinoric sorcerers are found all throughout Caria Manor, and one, named Pidia, is literally called a Carian servant, linking the Eternal Cities with Caria in an alliance, perhaps, that might have allowed them to learn more about the stars from the Albinorics. At any rate, Renala, with her full moon sorceries, was the champion of Caria. A prominent one too, apparently. And it's no surprise when you look at the powerful characteristics of her full moon. It has immense gravity, and it eclipses all other magics. It lowers defenses. It is enchanting. And Renala used all of these traits to charm the
I wish I
Academy,
was that tall.
to bewitch them, and
I wish I was
become
10
not
feet
just
tall.
the Queen of Caria, but also the master of Raya Lucaria itself. And so, of course, here is her portrait, displayed most prominently in the Academy of Raya Lucaria, right next to what many assume is a portrait of Selen. For if you unmask her in-game, then she actually looks very similar to this witch, someone who was worthy of an entire conspectus, and apparently was the most promising sorceress in the history of the Academy. But even Selen, with all her promise, or perhaps because of her promise, would not be tolerated in the end.
If you recall, I was exiled from the Academy of Raya Lucaria. It was for attempting to restore the primeval current of Glintstone sorcery. The toothless pedantry peddled by the Carian royal family can rot for all I care. I want Glintstone sorceries that open our minds, unbound by terrestrial taboos.
For Selen to know so much about what she calls toothless pedantry peddled by the Carian royal family, I assume she was a part of the Academy during Renala's reign over it, and that it was Renala's influence that finally led to the Academy's intolerance of primeval current research. And Selen wasn't the only one expelled from the Academy. The Masters Azure and Lusat, two of the founding masters of Glintstone sorcery, were at some point driven from the Academy as well. And it's easy to see why. The primeval current is dangerous. Lusat's mind was broken after watching a star cluster break apart. Azure saw a darkness in the primeval current and was left fearful of its abyss. And imagine something so dangerous that just looking at it can damage your mind irreparably. In this way, the primeval current is almost Lovecraftian in its horror. We can't pin down the exact truth of why it terrifies, but we see its terrible effects on others and are left to wonder. What's more, this cosmic current is primeval. It's one of the first, if not the first thing to exist in the universe, and the fact that our cosmic origins might be terrifying really is kind of a bizarre and bewitching thought, right? I mean, I want to know what's in this current that's driving everybody insane. Although I will mention, again, we kind of know that at least creatures like Estelle are up there, and Estelle kind of is a signature, horrific, Lovecraftian monster, so yeah. At any rate, Raya Lucaria was an institution now, with power and influence in the lands. But
not gonna lie, if I ever became very, very, very rich, for whatever reason, I would absolutely build a castle. I'm just saying. And when I die, I would want it turned into a museum. But I would absolutely build a castle, and I would base it off of, like, this kind of stuff. I'm definitely gonna play through as many Souls games as possible, take inspiration, just in case the day comes. You know? So, there's that. I would absolutely build... It wouldn't be that big, unfortunately, but I would make it my life's work to design and build the best castle ever. It would be so cool. Yeah, I bet it does, Dapper. I can't wait. Oh, Estelle caused an awful lot of mischief. Yo, Estelle is so cool. Oh god, I love Estelle so much. Compensating for... Hey! Man! Why you gotta bring my penis size into all this? Just because it's so small. Jeez. Alright. Just throwing it all out there in the open, huh?
And with these things, naturally, there would have come a need for self-preservation. And the biggest threat at this stage wouldn't have been external, it would have been internal. The biggest threat was probing the primeval current too deeply. And so, while primeval current research seems to still be okay as long as it's under the Carolus or Olivinus conspectus, a line was drawn, and the Masters Azure and Lusat were eventually driven from the Academy, as was Selen the Witch. When we first meet her, Selen states,
Well, there's the thing. If you build a small castle, then you have your living quarters, and then you start to build around it. That's the thing. And then that becomes the entrance. Because then at least you have somewhere that you can live. That's cool, just in case everything falls through.
that glintstone sorcery is rooted in the study of the stars, and she laments that most sorcerers have forgotten that fact. She resents that the sorcerers took their power and then sort of turned a blind eye to deeper research in order to protect themselves. And
That is true. I have played hundreds and hundreds of hours of RimWorld, so that does make sense. Yeah, yeah, okay.
it's kind of easy to empathize with her and to see her as this underdog fighting for the truth against an enormous institution. Even Thops thinks she's a good person in the end, but can you really blame Raya Lucaria for taking a stand when you see this? This is a school of graven mages, a mass of sorcerers fused together so that they might be fashioned into the seeds of stars. As the lore goes, this was apparently a valid line of research into the primeval current, and that in the name of this research, fellow sorcerers should be collected and fused together in a cluster to, I guess, create a star made of life. These creations were considered the nightmare of the Academy.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. They represented Selen's complete loyalty to the truth, no matter the cost to her fellow man. Naturally, such a thing had to be forbidden. But then, you have to empathize with Selen a little bit and agree that it is a bit ironic that the exact line of inquiry that gave rise to the Academy was the very thing that posed a threat to its existence in the end.
Yeah.
Eventually, the Academy would seek to rid itself of Caria's influence, but the Carian royal family had long prepared for the disloyalty of the Academy. There's a reason why the Carian Knight's shields are extremely magic resistant.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there are many spells based on a policy of Carian retaliation, where magic can be absorbed and then turned back against its caster. There's a reason why their knights were specifically sworn to the moon, not the stars. Renala, as a proficient astrologer, might have even foreseen the eventual disloyalty of the Academy, although that's just speculation on my part. But before that, there was another war that would come first, a war against the Champions of Gold, which Caria was extremely prepared to face as well. The Order of the Erd Tree had conquered fire giants, the Storm Lords, and Caria and the Academy were next, it seems. Led by Radagon, who we now know was a part of Marika, a great war began. But here, the Order of the Erd Tree actually met their match. Despite numbering fewer than 20, the Carian Knights were a match for even the Champions of Gold in battle, and enchanted troll knights fought on Caria's side as well, called into service from an ancient oath made with Renala, back in her youth atop the mountaintops of the giants. And so, instead of weathering a stalemate, a truce was proposed between the two parties, and sealed in holy matrimony.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The Order of the Erd Tree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
And of course, we all know that Radagon is Marika, but no one else did. And so secrecy was of the utmost importance to Radagon, and he imposed this need upon his newly acquired vassals. These are the Carian preceptors, essentially professors of sorcery who serve the Carian royals. They wear these blue robes embroidered with cosmic designs, which is a reference to Caria's astrological heritage, surely. But when Radagon married Renala, he ordered the Carian preceptors to wear an additional piece of attire, a mask with the mouth sewn shut with gold thread in that signature crisscross pattern that is emblematic of Radagon, to make it clear that all their matters were to be kept strictly private. For of course, Radagon was hiding something that might be able to be seen if anyone looked at him too closely. Indeed, this desire for secrecy was well founded, for someone did look at him too closely during this time. A sculptor who secretly rendered this dichotomy between Radagon and Marika into his work.
That's so
but no one else discovered Marika Radagon's secret, not until we came along. And long before that, Radagon would leave Renala, and her heart would go along with him. And it was then that those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion, after all. When we see her, we realize that she was likely left quite witless and innate after this loss of Radagon, and so it was no surprise that the Academy took this chance to rebel against the Carrion Royals. With Renala essentially held hostage and safely locked in their grand library, the Academy went to war with Caria, focusing their assault upon Caria Manor, for that is where a siege commemorated by this graveyard of swords took place. The enchanted soldiers who fought on behalf of the Academy were named the Knights of the Cuckoo, wearing red and blue surcoats that depict their namesake, and carrying shields that boasted high magic damage negation. They were explicitly purposed as mage hunters, and have been quoted as stating, "Our enemy is none other than Caria itself." They also throw Albinoric pots, which reference the torture of Albinorics and the hatred of Albinorics that the Cuckoos have.
Rude.
And again, the Albinorics are found throughout all Caria, so these Knights of the Cuckoo were fighting against some true enemies here.
Decrepit
But
fucks.
despite some of their descriptions saying that the Cuckoo Knights were sworn to the Academy, I think that's actually just wishful thinking by Raya Lucaria. The Scholar's armament and shield spells, for example, were actually spells that were, quote-unquote, taught to the Knights of the Cuckoo as payment for their contract. So they were getting paid to fight, and learning these low-intellect spells suited them because they were not proficient sorcerers. For example, instead of casting spells, they would crush broken clumps of glintstone,
I hate those
dubbed
fingers.
faux sorceries or fake sorceries by the Academy. But most telling about their loyalty is the Cuckoo Knight armor, which says its left breast is emblazoned with a peering cuckoo, whence came their name, which straight up admits that perhaps the bird's shrewd gaze is an expression of their refusal to be mere servants of the Academy. And in the end, the Knights of the Cuckoo failed pretty hard. They were not only defeated in the siege of Caria Manor, but they were turned into puppets there, and many now fight on Caria's behalf. We get an idea of how...
Man, talk about, like, absolutely getting fucked. That is hilarious. That's some real necromancy shit there, man. Imagine that. Yeah. Oh my god.
much they must resent this when they somehow break free and confront Pydia, a Carrion, an Albinoric, and a mage. Three things that they absolutely hate.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, guys, that's where I have to leave things for now. There's an entire summary I also wanted to do about Celia, the town of sorcery, as well. But honestly, I feel like Celia is very difficult to speculate on and puzzle out, so considering how long that would take to put into words, I think it might have to wait until another video.
Okay.
But please subscribe,
watch that,
because I will talk about it eventually, and I think I'll also give Selen her own Prepare to Cry episode as well. Hers is going to be amazing. There's some good things ahead, as always. Special thanks to Quelag for reviewing this script, and of course to Miss Pap1, who did all of the incredible visuals in this video. He's a true master, and I'm lucky to be working with him. But I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you for watching.
Oh, that's lovely. Yet again, another great video. Oh man, I love that. It's really well put together, and I can actually pay attention to it, which is nice, because the thing is, I struggled really hard with learning about the lore in game, because when it comes to just reading stuff, my brain doesn't really hold on to it super well. Like growing up, I couldn't, I was talking about this earlier with Shell. Growing up, reading textbooks, I didn't really learn very well just from reading text. Like I need to have like visuals with it. Like I learn by doing or by seeing. I don't learn by reading necessarily. Like I won't hold on to facts very well that way. So these kinds of videos are so good for me for learning this kind of stuff. It's fascinating. I can't wait to watch more. It's good because the story is amazing. The lore is amazing, and it really helps that they have incredible visuals to go along with it. It really, really helps a lot. Frenzied Flame video. Well, we'll have to watch that one too. Honestly, I want to watch like all of his lore videos. Oh yeah, no, it's definitely something where you have to write down notes. Yeah, no, for sure, Varm. For sure. Alright, give me 1 sec. I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom again. Your girl's had 3 coffees, so, you know. If you know, you know. So give me 1 sec. I will be right back. I'm just gonna throw on some music. There's a couple more videos I wanted to watch. They're shorter. They're like 10 minutes each, roughly. So they won't be too long. And then after that, we can jump into Spiritfarer. So 1 sec, I'll be right back.